Hello my friends, I am Kelsey. I have my booktube hat, and today I am finally filming a video that I've been promising to do ever since I started reading The Lord of the Rings, which is a discussion of my experience reading Lord of the Rings for the first time. I know, I'm like half a century late to the party. Everyone else has already read Tolkien, but I'm young. That's my excuse. I've never seen the movies either, so this really was my first experience with this story, and I was actually really pleasantly surprised to learn how little I had been spoiled for this story. I did listen to The Hobbit on audiobook maybe a year ago now, so that was the entirety of my preparation for this. First, I'm going to take you on a little tour of this boxed set. These are the revised second edition. I'm not sure exactly what year that dates to, with a new foreword by the author. And I'm just going to show you a bit around each of these books because they are old and they are cool and they smell wonderful, and I wish I could show you the smell, but I can't. But the dust jackets look like this. And this is the first book. The color here is orange, and the top pages are colored. The first book is the most faded of the three, so you can't really see it. And they each have a map, a fold-out map in the back. And initially I thought that all three of the maps were the same, but I was wrong. It turned out they weren't. And it took me way too long to notice that, and way too long to actually pay attention to the maps, because I usually completely disregard maps in books. I just plow on through and expect the book itself to explain everything I need to know. And I'm not sure if that was the right approach for Tolkien. I sort of like backtracked in the middle and started looking at maps and things. So that was the first book, The Fellowship of the Ring, in orange. The second book, The Two Towers, is in red, and this is also red, the design here. And the map in the back, I don't know if you're going to be able to see these maps at all, but I feel like I just need to show you each of the maps in hope that you'll get some value out of them, because that is what I am doing. I am showing off my books. The third book, The Return of the King, is in purple, and this is the one that's least faded, dust jacket and top of the pages. Bum ba bum ba bum. So design on the cover is in purple. And the map in the back. Aha! Oh, that's big enough lettering you'll probably be able to see Gondor and Mordor. Yes. And now I can't fold back up my map. There we go. And this is the box. It's just a box on all the other sides. That's the only side that matters. So now I'm just going to put these back in the box and keep them there for the rest of the video. I don't know if you got any value from that tour of my second edition volumes, but I think they are cool old books, and I wanted to show them off. So I'm really glad that I've read Lord of the Rings now. If it matters at all, I gave them each 4 stars on Goodreads. I'm not sure that's particularly relevant, but I can see why people like to reread Tolkien, because I feel like I would get more out of these books on a reread, things that went over my head in the first 2 books or that aren't fully explained until later on. I think there's a whole lot that would make more sense to me going again from the start and reading through. So I could see that they might potentially become 5-star books upon a reread. And frankly, I really like books that are rich and layered enough that you can get more out of them by rereading them. And I sense that potential very strongly in these books, which is part of what I really liked about them. The reason though that I really wanted to read Lord of the Rings, and the reason I'm really glad I did, is because I do read a lot of fantasy, and Tolkien is cited as someone who really changed and developed the fantasy genre in a way that's influenced just about everyone who came after. And I think I realized coming to the end of it that, interestingly, although I read a lot of fantasy, I haven't really read much, if any, really Tolkien-esque epic fantasy. I know there are a lot of writers and series that are really in the tradition of Tolkien, and I haven't read much of that. And I think it's because there are things about the epic fantasy storyline and the tropes that go with that I am not quite so fond of. I tend to gravitate more towards fairy tale fantasy, which tends to be sort of more intimate and personal stories. And although I know that a lot of the epic fantasy that I don't read takes a lot from the overall story arc and history and world building and plotline type of things that Tolkien has in here, I do think that a lot of the fantasy I read takes a lot from the descriptive quality of the writing and the more subtle, mysterious aspects of the magic. It occurred to me that even though Tolkien is really known for this intricate world building, he isn't really doing magic system world building. The magic is all sort of under the surface of the descriptions of the land and the feelings of things and the scope of history. And I think all of those things are things that I can now identify in authors I like who are taking influence from Tolkien. Also, the practical protagonists. I haven't read anything quite like Hobbits, but I do like fantasy with sort of more humble, practical-minded protagonists. I do read a good deal of that. I do really like hobbits. The hobbits are just great. I enjoy them as practical protagonists whose priorities are really in the right place. And I like them as protagonists in that they are sort of outsiders to the great epic scope of the history and the story that is the heart of what's going on in these books. And so we as the reader get to be thrown into it and figure out what's going on as they do. And likewise, it's really fascinating to see all of the people who are the major players in this big epic story experiencing the hobbits for the first time as something that has like emerged out of legend when we, the reader, know all about their, humble home life in the Shire. I thought that was just exceptionally clever. I loved all the humanity in this story. I loved the relationships between the characters. I feel like I should give a special shout out to the Ents. I loved the Ents. I had never heard of Ents. I don't know how, with like all of the Tolkien stuff that pervades our world, I had never heard of Ents before, but I genuinely had no idea to expect them, and I thought they were wonderful. I guess my biggest outstanding question surrounding Tolkien and Lord of the Rings is, at this point, how much work it makes sense for the average reader to put into understanding this world and Tolkien's world building and all of the extensive history and so forth. As a reader, I tend to be a little lazy. I kind of want the work to speak for itself, hence my tendency to automatically overlook the maps, for example. But this like super intricate world-building fictional history extravaganza is basically what Tolkien seems to be known for, right? So I kind of just plunged blindly into the first book. And I think my experience of these books might have been different from a lot of people who read them these days, because I think these days a lot of people see the movies first, and I haven't seen the movies, so I was hoping that my experience would be closest to as Tolkien intended. I really don't know enough about Tolkien and what he intended, though, to know if I did it right. My first impressions were a little mixed. I had really loved the sort of lighter, whimsical tone of The Hobbit, and so initially I felt a little betrayed that story had apparently been the tip of such a big, dark, gloomy, looming iceberg. But around the middle of the first book I adjusted, and I got really attached to the characters and the story, and I was fine. I didn't much like the extent to which later in the series there is an emphasis on war heroics, all mingled up in this great destiny stuff. I don't really go for those traditional notions of valor and glory in battle. That doesn't resonate with me. It's not something I'm interested in reading about. It's not something that jives with the way I see the world and what I see as being important in the world. I sort of recoil from the idea that some particularly noble characters are therefore also like practically invincible in battle. It's just weird to me. And actually one of the things I really appreciated about The Hobbit was how it sort of undermined those notions in a sort of subversive way by sort of setting up that type of a story and then delivering a totally different type of heroism. So I was a little disappointed by the emphasis on battle heroics in these books. Although, of course, I understand that it is really important that that isn't the only type of heroics that happens in this story. And some of that, I'm sure, is just the, like, old-fashioned worldview. There were other things that, of course, felt old-fashioned and outdated in the worldview of these books that I'm not going to really get into. But all that to say, I just couldn't really get as invested in the battle scene portions of the second two books as I was in the travel scenes or the personal scenes that were interactions between characters, that sort of thing. And so I'm sort of wary of the movies because I've been told that the movies focus a whole lot more on the war and battle stuff, sort of at the expense of all of the slower personal stuff that I really like. The ending of the series I found to be incredibly bittersweet, in a really profound way that hit me very hard and stuck with me afterwards. I'm not 100% sure how I'm meant to interpret the ending. I just know how it made me feel. And so now I come to the part where I start asking you questions because I'm assuming that a good portion of the people who watch my channel have long ago read Lord of the Rings and know way more about Tolkien than I do. So this is the third book. It ends right here. And all of this is appendices. And I thought I was going to read the appendices, and then I didn't. Guys, are these appendices important? Do I need to study the annals of the kings and rulers? Do I need to study the Greater Baggins family tree and several timelines? I guess the pronunciations would be helpful. I could use some pronunciations. I just don't know if reading this stuff after is going to do me any good, or if it's the sort of thing that I should read maybe before I do a reread so that I would get like the full reread experience of knowing stuff going in. But it does seem kind of dry and stuffy. And I appreciate the cleverness of creating dry and stuffy scholarship for a fictional world. I mean, that's smart. That takes smarts. I'm just not totally sure I want to read it. So I'm wondering, well, first of all, I don't even know if those same appendices are in every single edition or if some editions are different. Are these the same, are these same appendices in your editions? These are Appendix A, Annals of the Kings and Rulers, Appendix B, The Tale of Years, Appendix C, Family Trees, Appendix D, The Calendars. Do I really need calendars? Appendix E, Writing and Spelling. Appendix F, The Languages and Peoples of the Third Age. That could be helpful. Aha! And the index. How would I even know what things in the index, like, I want to look up? I guess I just don't know how to use the appendices in ways that would be helpful. I know they contain the information I need to understand these books more clearly. I'm just not sure how to practically go about using them. Secondly, I know there is more stuff that Tolkien wrote. I am aware of the Silmarillion. I don't particularly want to read it, but if anyone can make a case that I really totally should, I will someday. I also don't know what is out there that I maybe should read that's about Tolkien and his place in history and the history of the genre and his influence and his body of work and what it means. I don't really feel like I want to spend a lot of time reading any serious Tolkien scholarship, but if there are things that I should know, then I do want to know what you think those are and where I should find them. If you've got some good websites or online articles to send my way, I would like that very much. Or even like recommendations for not online articles. I don't want to read like whole books, but I'm willing to dig stuff up if it's interesting. Basically, I feel like I got the beginner's first experience of Lord of the Rings as was probably intended. But I know that there is a whole lot more out there to be learned about Tolkien and about this world, and I don't know what's important. I also know there are some movies, and that some people think the movies are really, really important. So I'll probably watch those someday, eventually. Someday pretty soon. Oh man, you know what I think I'm going to do? I think I'm going to just end this video and edit it. Then if I think of more things to say, I'll film them tomorrow and add them on as an appendix to the video. Won't that be great? Okay, nice talking to you. Look forward to hearing from you in the comments. Okay, bye for now. Appendix 1. The series is named after the villain, whom we never meet. I feel like this is noteworthy, but I'm not sure why. Appendix 2. The second book is called The Two Towers, and I couldn't for the life of me figure out which two the towers were. There were a whole lot of towers in those books, and it wasn't at all clear which two were the ones of the title of the second book. So after I finished the series, I googled it, and it turns out I'm not alone in my confusion. No one on the internet seems to know which two the towers are either, so I was vaguely relieved that I hadn't, like, missed something really big and important that everyone else got. But is that something that people, like, care about? I like putting appendices on my own work far more than I like actually reading the appendices that other people put on their work.